Make sure you read the learning objectives carefully and you understand them before you get started. We're going to begin this conversation with Proverbs 16:3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. Strategic planning and forecasting are central to managerial accounting, and that's when we look at budgeting, that's really, in a sense, what it's part of. It's part of the general strategic planning work of an institution. So this verse introduces the idea of aligning plans with faith-based values and ethical intentions. It encourages managers to not only analyze data, but to commit their strategic initiatives to a higher purpose, inviting integrity, accountability, and wisdom into the decision-making process. I won't read all of Proverbs 31. It's the wife of noble character, and it's familiar, it should be familiar, and it describes the kind of person, kind of character a wife should have. And that's the same kind of character that an organization should achieve through its actions, even though it's an entity and not a person. And that's the kind of character you want the employees to exhibit. Quite a few years ago now, it's probably been 15, I was in my last CFO, my last stint as the CFO that I was for 25-ish years, and had not yet transitioned to teaching full-time. And I was part of this project of converting some training materials to an online environment. This organization, I can't remember what the name of the organization was, but it was a group of Christian Fortune 500 leaders, CEOs. So to join the group, you had to be part of the Fortune 500, and second, you had to be a believer, and you had to want to infuse Christian values into your organization. The training material that we were converting was material that was presented live. And the hope was that if it was digitized and put into an online setting, which we did, that it would be more accessible to more people. Farther down the organization, people could participate. What I found most fascinating about this is two things. First, there were almost 250 members of this group, which is amazing. And second is that they were quite serious about infusing their organization with Christian values, ethical values, and making decisions, business decisions, based on those values. One of the gentlemen started one or two. He had factories. I can't remember. I think it's furniture, but I don't remember. But he was a manufacturer, and he started factories within, I think it was 2 different prisons in a particular state, and hired the prisoners to work. And they had to apply. I had to go through a process to be selected, and then they were paid full wages, competitive wages to people on the outside. Here's the catch, if there is a catch. The prisoner had to do 2 things with the money before they personally could spend a penny. Actually, 3 things. They had to tithe it. they had to repay the state the cost of their incarceration. So they were not costing the taxpayers any money to be in prison. And third, they had to send a portion of it to their families so that they could begin to support their families again. And this was not a minimum security prison. This was a maximum security prison filled with people who had done some bad things. And it was literally changing their lives in significant ways. The fourth, there was another requirement that I talked about the requirements of what they had to do with the money. Another requirement to work in the factory was that they had to attend a Bible study. Many of them were baptized and came to know Christ, and it was very, very significant. So that's one takeaway from being involved in this project. The other was equally impressive, a subset of that group, and the subset was maybe 15 people. And there might have been other subsets, but this is the only one I knew about. This subset of people from this group met every year, and they reviewed each other's finances and their spending patterns. And the reason they did that is to hold each other accountable, because at the beginning of each year, they would commit to a budget and they would commit to a lifestyle that they had agreed together was appropriate for somebody in their position, but as a Christian and not wanting to live extravagantly. So what they didn't want to do is to buy fancy cars and big houses and spend tons and tons of money on things like that were meaningless. They wanted to use their money to build the kingdom of God. So every year they would hold each other accountable, and they would review the previous years and lay out their plans for the next year. And there was a video that went with this that I no longer have access to because my role is different. I am no longer don't work for the school that project that did that project, so I have no access. But the video was filmed in one of the gentleman's houses, and it was nice, very nice, but it was not extravagant. It was, modest, really. I mean, it was just nice, and it wasn't much different than the house I live in. It probably wasn't bigger. And he drove the same truck I drove at the time, Ford F-150 XLT, which is not the lowest level, but the next level. It didn't have leather seats. It didn't have all the fancy options. And he was committed to living a lifestyle that he thought honored God, even though he had wealth. So those are the things that I took away from that. And those are the things that I think of when I think of the wife of noble character. Romans 12:17, be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. This instruction highlights the need for transparency and integrity. And this is a great example of what I just talked about, of these people meeting and holding each other accountable for their spending and adherence to their personal budgets. Ecclesiastes 11:12, invest in 7 ventures, yes, and 8, and you do not know what disaster may come to the land. That has to do with diversification, strategically allocating resources, trying to spread risk. Steps in the decision-making process, that's really what this chapter is about, is how to make good decisions. And first is to identify the problem. Second is identify determine the alternatives, evaluate the cost and benefit of the alternatives, make a decision, and review the results of the decision. I think executive decision-making is fascinating because I've worked with strong, confident leaders who make decisions based on the information they have, and they move on, and they make sure that everybody understands the decision because they know that they there's no guarantee, there's no certainty in decision making, but there can be clarity so that so that your teams understand the decision so that they can implement it as effectively as possible. Others are weak and insecure and they want certainty, and there is no certainty. So they just churn in data and often don't make any decision. Steps in the decision-making process. We're back to grids and illustrations that I'm going to let you read. Relevant costs have the potential to influence a decision. 2 criteria for a relevant cost. It occurs in the future, and it differs between alternatives. Relevant costs are also called differential costs, incremental costs, and avoidable costs. Irrelevant costs are those that will not influence the decision. They've occurred in the past, they're sunk costs, and they're the same regardless of the alternative chosen. An opportunity cost is the foregone benefit that is given up when one alternative is selected over another. At full capacity, adding additional work requires giving up a portion. Adding additional work, you have to give up existing work. The benefit of the existing work given up is an opportunity cost. With idle capacity, additional work can be added without sacrificing any existing work, so there is no opportunity cost to the additional work. A special order is a one-time order that is outside the scope of normal sales. When analyzing a special order, only the incremental costs and benefits are relevant. Special order decision we have here, it's in the textbook, so read it. Make sure you can trace the numbers through. 2 important cautions in special order decisions. The analysis should be used for one-time or special orders, and the result of this analysis are valid only if the company has excess or idle production capacity. Incremental analysis without excess capacity is a different conversation. Make sure you understand how the numbers flow. There may be other strategic reasons for accepting a special order: an opportunity to enter a new market or region, an opportunity to increase brand awareness by partnering with a major university. Please keep in mind that the numerical analysis must be balanced against the qualitative factors. Make or buy decisions. A decision to perform a particular activity or function in-house or purchase from an outside supplier has traditionally been called an make or buy decision, but it could also be called an insourcing versus outsourcing decision. Key questions managers should ask: how much will the cost and revenue change? Are there opportunity costs associated with either alternative? Are there other qualitative factors to consider? Make or buy decisions. Make sure you follow that analysis through. Qualitative analysis. Will the quality of, this is based on IKEA and food service. These are some of the qualitative things that they had to consider when they considered doing away with their internal food service. Keep or drop segments. Managers must sometimes decide whether to eliminate a particular division or segment of the business. These decisions are called keep or drop decisions, or continue or discontinue decisions. Key questions: how much will total revenue and total cost change if the segment is eliminated? Will other segments or product lines be affected? Are there opportunity costs associated with keeping the segment? And are there other qualitative factors to consider? Here's an example of keep or drop. Make sure you trace everything through. And this is the impact that decision would have as part of the illustration. Part of the illustration. Qualitative factors to consider: what's the impact on customer loyalty and employee morale? Will there be any impact on other products and customers? Regarding substitute goods, customers might choose an alternate good. For example, purchasing the hymnus bookcase if the Finby bookcase was then available. However, with complementary goods, eliminating one product could have a negative effect on the related product. Sell or process further decisions. Businesses are often faced with the decision to sell a product as is or add additional features so that it can be sold for a higher price. As a general rule, we process further only if incremental revenues exceed incremental costs. Costs of manufacturing the product up to the sell or process decision point are sunk and therefore irrelevant. Make sure you trace the example through. Prioritizing products with constrained resources. When a limited resource restricts a company's ability to satisfy demand, the company is said to have a constrained resource that is referred to as a bottleneck. To maximize profits in the short run, a company with a bottleneck must prioritize its products or services so as to maximize contribution margin per unit of the constrained resource. The focus is on contribution margin because fixed costs will not change in the short run and are not relevant. Make sure you read through the example carefully. Common rules for analyzing costs and benefits. Relevant costs and benefits occur in the future and differ between the decision alternatives. Relevant costs are also sometimes called avoidable or differential costs. It will change based on the decision made. Variable costs are usually relevant to the decision because they vary with the number of units produced or sold, and fixed costs may not be relevant because they do not change with the number of units produced or sold. Summary of incremental analysis. Fixed costs that are directly related to the decision, also called direct fixed costs, may be avoidable and thus relevant. Common or allocated fixed costs are shared by multiple products or services and are generally not relevant. Opportunity costs are the lost benefit of choosing one alternative over another. These costs are relevant and occur when capacity is reached or resources are constrained. The relative analysis provides a starting point for making the quantitative analysis provides a starting point for making decisions, but must be balanced against other qualitative factors.